Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Prairie podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Weeb. It is wonderful to have you with us today, no matter where you're listening from. Whether you're a student here at the college, whether you're a prospective student, parent of a student, alumni, community member, or someone who just found us by accident, we are excited to have you with us today. And I'm personally excited because we've got two wonderful guests with us today. And I hope you enjoy what they have to say as we talk a bit about GCC, which was our Global Connections Conference that happened last week, March 17th and 18th. It was a wonderful time. I won't say too much because we're going to dig into it all together. So, Esther and Sheryl, why don't you guys introduce yourselves? Tell us a bit about who you are, some of that context, though, and we can start from there.
All right. Well, my name's Esther Zimmerman. I've heard of Prairie for my entire life. My mother graduated from here in the 1960s. I grew up in Scotland and served as a missionary with BCM International for more than 20 years. And around 10 years ago, moved into the world of academia where I serve at Lancaster Bible College.
Hmm.
But the thread through each of those pieces has always been children and God's heart for the children of the world.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Esther. Sheryl.
Well, my name is Sheryl Grunwald, and I'm Albertan. I grew up near Leduc, and I've been involved with children my whole life. I was an elementary school teacher, but then God called me into ministry, so I worked as a children's pastor. And then just over 20 years ago, God gave me this dream to disciple the children of the nations, and it led me into mission work of training children's ministry leaders all over the world.
Hmm.
And so that is what I've been doing. I work with Action International Ministries as a global trainer for children's ministries.
Okay.
And it's just my joy to equip people to reach and disciple children.
Wonderful. And,
Yes.
and Sheryl, Esther, you've worked together before, correct?
That's right.
Would you mind commenting on some of the projects you guys have done together or the ways that you have worked
Yeah.
together before?
Sure. So it's really the Global Children's Forum that brought us together. And Global Children's Forum is a partnering network globally of organizations that work with children as a focus. So 2008 in Wheaton, Illinois, a group of organizations from around the world came together to just ask the question, what can we do together for the children of the world that's bigger than what any of our single organizations can do? And at Global Children's Forum, Sylvia's then boss, or Cheryl's then boss, Sylvia, was there, and she and I got to know one another, and we embarked on an adventure called One for 50. So One for 50 was born out of a dream of what would it take to give every single child in the world an opportunity to know and follow Jesus for a lifetime. So I was coming from a training organization, Sylvia was coming from a training organization, and it really was One for 50 then that brought Cheryl and I together. So
Okay.
she can share a little bit more about that journey because there's been a number of projects since then.
Yeah. One of the things we worked on together was just developing a curriculum that people could use to train their children's workers so that there would be one children's worker trained for every 50 children in the world. But even as we were doing the grassroots level training, so Sunday school teachers or kids club workers, we realized that there was this gap in many of our organizations. There were people that were rising up as leaders in children's ministry, but in
Hmm.
all of our organizations, they would hit a ceiling. Sort of, they could only go so far
Yeah.
because many times around the world, academic institutions aren't open to children's ministry leadership. That's just not done. And so we began to dream even bigger, like what could we do together
Hmm.
to help invest in emerging leaders of children's ministry? And we developed a year-long program, training, internship, mentorship called the Leadership Experience. And we've been taking leaders through this in small batches to really mentor and walk with them. But Esther was part of the team that designed that with me. We both worked on developing curriculum, which is degree level material, but we teach it in a very non-formal way, very
Yeah.
experientially. So it's like somebody doesn't have to have an academic degree to get it and be able to take it back. And we've both been facilitators with the leadership experience in many different parts of the world over the last 10 years as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love what you mentioned there about how, you don't need to have the academic degree to understand that material. And I think that's a really cool movement. Recognize a lot of people either don't have access to the education world, or just don't have the time to learn all that
Yeah.
lingo, learn how to do that type of work, but finding a way to
Exactly.
bring it to their level.
Exactly.
That's really awesome to hear.
Mhm.
Thanks for sharing, guys.
Mhm.
Uh, for some context, Esther and Cheryl, you two have been our speakers, and you spoke at our Global Connections conference. It was wonderful to have you with us there. And hopefully you can see that they have some understanding in the world of children, and they've been in the world of children for a long time.
Mhm.
And we were so blessed to have them with us. So at the conference, we had this theme, this idea of "Feed My Lambs," and it's just this simple statement with the tagline "Nurturing God's Children." I'm curious if you guys could give us a quick flyby of what you guys were talking about, and then we can dig deeper into some of the specifics of what we discussed.
But I love the theme that Prairie chose, Feed My Lambs, because it really begins in that conversation that Jesus had with Peter by the shore of the Sea of Galilee, where he asks a simple but provocative question: Peter, do you love me?
Yeah.
And that we explored the first night, how that's really the basis for any kind of ministry we want to do, including ministry with children.
Mhm.
And we observe that when Jesus gives Peter a task, the first task he gives him is to the littlest ones.
Hmm. Yeah.
Cheryl, you picked up with session 2.
So in the second session, we looked at that idea of what does it mean to feed or to shepherd the lambs, but really focusing in on some of the pictures of scripture where the shepherd is one who is going to lay down his life for the lambs, to protect them from the wolves, from the lions, for the last bet. So we began looking at children at risk in the world and the picture of how broken children are in the world today and all the challenges and the crises and the traumas that they go through, not just globally, but even here in Canada. And then we started looking at what can we be doing as shepherds for these lambs to be that one person who can make a difference in their lives.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And then on the Wednesday morning, we
Yeah.
picked up with a session looking really at the spiritual development of children and what does it look like to believe that children can respond to the voice of the shepherd.
Yeah.
So often we think about children as if they're just sitting there like an empty bucket, waiting for us to tell them what to believe.
Yeah.
And yet God's already at work in the hearts of children around the world and around us.
Hmm. Certainly.
And then in the closing session, we started looking at how can we empower our children to be agents of mission with us.
Mm.
That's part of feeding them, is like releasing them to do it. And so we took a look at the possibilities, what children can do, their ideas of their capabilities, and then how we can support them, give them the opportunities, give them the support and the responsibility to really make a difference, because our kids are itching. They're waiting to do something for Jesus. And we just need to open the doors and let them do it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I think I, along with many others, just thank you for coming to speak and walking us through those sessions. Each one had some valuable points to be taken away. And I just think of this quote a friend shared with me earlier in the year. One of the members actually on the planning committee for this conference, as we were discussing the theme and where we're going to go. And this line, he received it from another friend, so it's been passed down the line. But the idea that children are not tomorrow's church, they're part of today's church,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And oftentimes, I think this is some of the conversation we've been having at Prairie, but specifically even at GCC, is that children aren't someone else's quote unquote problem, right? They're not a different world. I remember you mentioned at one point, I think it was Wednesday morning, that there's no junior Holy Spirit, right? They're not separate. They're a part of the church. They're part of the world. They're part of our communities, and we can't forget about them. And they're just as valuable to the society as a whole, but they are important to God, and God really cares about the children. I think that was something I really gleaned as you guys were talking, is that God's heart is for the children. Going back to the first session, and that was the one that you shared at Esther to kick things off. The question of, do you love me? I think that hit really hard for a lot of people. It's just, God's doesn't first ask us to do something, but he's first asking us where our heart is at. Do you love me? Because if you love me, then you're going to follow what I have to say. And you're going to trust that what I'm calling you to do is actually for the best. It's for the good. As you were talking about that, I thought back to the story of the Israelites, that when they were in Egypt, God didn't first give them the law
Mm,
and then say, okay, I've called you to be my people. I love you. I care about you. I'm going to save you. He saved them first.
mm,
Mm.
And then he almost posed the same question of, do you love me? And if you love me, then you're going to follow what I've called you to do. And it just seems like there's this theme in scripture. And I'm sure we all have our own stories of those times where God has called us to and says, do you love me?
yeah.
So anyway, all of that in mind, I'm curious if you could kind of dig deeper into some of what you shared at that first session about that
Sure.
question of, do you love me? And if you could give us some more points on that.
Yeah. So I think as I teach at a sister college, and I know that I constantly have students who are in my office, particularly at this time in the school year, and the question that's foremost in their minds is, God, what do you want me to do?
Hmm.
And I find that that echoes my own questions sometimes too, that I'm up against a wall and God, I want to know what you want me to do. And I think on a surface level, it feels like a good question. It can be. But my concern is that if I'm honest about my own life, often I'm actually asking God what He wants me to do because I want to assess it and
Mm.
determine whether I think it's a good
Yeah.
fit for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one of the things I shared at the session was just Jesus isn't interested in negotiation with us. Jesus is interested in, do we love Him? And in effect, what Jesus gives Peter is a blank check. And we talked a little bit about the fact that students today don't necessarily use checks,
Yes.
but this idea that God calls us to sign over
Mm.
an agreement to do what He's asked us to do, and then allow Him to fill in the blanks,
Mm.
trusting that as our good shepherd, He actually knows us, He's created us. What He's asked us to do is going to be the perfect fit, whether we think it is or not.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I think that question, do you love me,
Yeah.
forces us to assess the worthiness of Jesus and not the worthiness of the task, which I
Mm.
think is where we often start the conversation.
I think it is. We like to know what we're doing,
Yeah.
right? And we like to have that input. We want that input. We want to negotiate.
Mm,
But like you said, Jesus isn't interested in negotiating. He wants to know where our heart is at.
yeah.
And if we love him, here you go. Here's what I got for you. Are you willing to sign the blank check? I do think it's a brilliant
Mm,
um, example. Even if most of us never write checks, I think we understand the reference, right? I
yeah.
think that's wonderful. And it's awesome.
Yeah.
And then I think that evening was really great to have you come in there, Cheryl, and just talk about, okay, if Jesus has called us to be his shepherds, if he asked us, do you love me? And we said, yes, Lord, I do love you. We do love you. Okay, feed my little lambs, be the
Mm,
shepherds. And you talk to them about, okay, what's the role of the shepherd? It's to
Mhm.
protect, it's to fight to the last bit. I love that verse you guys found in Amos there about fighting for that last scrap, that bit of the ear, or maybe
Yeah.
just the leg from the lion's mouth. It's this idea, never ending fight
Yeah.
for the sheep, for the little lambs. And you shared some statistics. I know those were some tough statistics. But then you also shared some hope in that and ways that we
Right.
can practically engage.
Mhm.
I'm curious if you recall any of those numbers, if you'd be willing to share some
I
of that.
can I can share a few of them. When you look at children who've been involved in war,
Hmm.
there's an estimated probably close to 40 million children who've been displaced because of war.
Yep.
And so some of those children are displaced outside. They're refugees or they are asylum seekers.
Hmm.
And so that's just children. That's not even parents and
Yeah.
all the others who go. But there's also the internally displaced children who are still in their country, but they've had to flee to another part of the country just for safety.
Yep.
Those were 2024 numbers, and I'm sure they're higher
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
Um, we talked about things like hunger, where there's children dying every 10 seconds. There's a child dying under the age of 5 from malnutrition. And 45 million children are dealing with severe malnutrition. That means it's wasting. It's called wasting disease, which basically stunts every part of their development, even how they learn how to think, as not just their bodies, but it's all of their social skills as well are stunted because of malnutrition. We looked at things like sexual exploitation. There are some children, 1.7 million children are
Hmm.
being trafficked. So that's they're physically being sold
Yep.
for sexual problems or for sexual delight of other people. But because of the advent of the smartphone,
Mhm.
online sexual exploitation is just exploding. They
Hmm.
estimate up to 300 million children
Wow.
are involved in some way because somebody can just take their smartphone and take a photo or a video or make them do things and sell the photos to online pornography
Hmm.
seller or receivers.
Wow.
It's heartbreaking. And it goes on. We looked at Canada
Yep.
even, because in Canada, one of the biggest issues for our kids is mental health.
Mhm.
And Stats Can says in Canada, there's probably 1 out of every 5 children with a diagnosed mental illness. This is between the ages of 2 and 17. And so there's probably more that aren't diagnosed, but it's a pandemic in our own country.
Mhm.
There's things like bullying and addictions to gaming and pornography addictions, even
Yeah.
among elementary age kids in our country. And so that was such a real thing. But we turned it around and we talked
Yes.
about you can be one person and you can be one person that can make a difference in the life of a
Yes.
child. Because you can be, we called it a rich person.
Yes.
And
Yep.
it talked about somebody who shows respect to children. Respect is all about listening to them, seeing them as made in the image of God, and taking time to know who they are and saying, I see you. And then I is about information. So giving them information. When kids have gone through a difficult time, sometimes they just need to know what's going to be happening so I can know I feel safe where I am.
Yeah.
Or it might be about the condition that they're in, or that they're not the only one who goes through this.
Hmm.
The C is about connection, and that's all about the relationship that you need to build.
Yeah.
Children want to trust you, and many times when children have gone through difficulties,
They can't
they've
trust.
lost
Yeah.
trust
Yeah.
because people have hurt them. And so when I show you love and compassion, then it opens the door for them to begin to trust and the healing begins.
Hmm.
And then H is all about hope. And we know that God is a God of hope.
Yeah.
And he is the God of healing. And so if we can help children see beyond that immediate thing that's happened to them, that God is still at work, that they can have these small wins, they can be successful in little things. Those are just steps towards their recovery from the difficulties they've gone through.
Hmm. That's wonderful. What I really appreciated about the way you ended that session off is that it didn't just leave us with all these numbers and this weight, but with nothing to do about it,
Mhm.
right? And that's what I appreciate, that concept of the rich person, and I can be that one person to make a difference, right?
Exactly.
In our community, there are children around us, there are
Mhm.
youth around us, and oftentimes they just need someone to come alongside them, to respect them,
Yeah.
to give them a hope, right?
And I think,
Yeah,
Andrew, that if we would look back in our lives, we could
yeah,
probably point to a person
exactly.
that was that significant person in our childhood or our
Yep,
adolescence who really invested in us and supported us outside of maybe our family,
yep.
people who really cared about us as an
That's
individual.
exactly it. I think we can all think of that. Even if we were raised in a family that was loving, that was this family that was dedicated to following Jesus and taught that to us. Oftentimes there was an outside person, right? Or there's an outside person. I think in my own life, there's a couple outside people that stepped
Mhm.
in, and they made a difference in my life.
Yeah.
And I had wonderful parents, but it was at the same time having some of those outside people to step in can really make an impact. I think that's really wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. One of my favorite parts of the conference was seeing the drawings. I think we all loved that, because it's the heart of a kid expressed. I think, as you mentioned there, oftentimes they don't have the words to express what they're
Yeah.
thinking,
Mhm.
but you can draw what you're imagining, what you're picturing, what's in your mind. And that was a really cool part of the third session. There's just children. God is calling the children already. My
Yeah.
my favorite picture probably was the one with Jesus and Nicodemus and the grenades all around. But it's true. Jesus, he can protect, right?
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
cares and he protects and he guards.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about those drawings. Give some context for us about what you were looking at there with
Sure.
those.
Yeah, so in our third session, we were really thinking about Jesus as the shepherd who's going on ahead of the sheep and calling for them. And we said it's going to take a paradigm change for many of us to really view children as little lambs who are capable of recognizing and responding to the voice
Hmm.
of Jesus. So often in ministry, we think about children, we talk about them as blank slates or empty buckets or even a piece of unformed clay. And those images suggest that children are inanimate. They're just sitting there, they're passive, there's nothing going on. And yet, I love that picture of Jesus calling the little lambs because I think it's a much more
Mm,
accurate picture of what's happening.
yeah.
So we talked about the fact that for many children, they've got big ideas about God.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on spiritually behind the scenes from children. But because children don't have a lot of language, we sometimes mistake their lack of language for a lack of thoughts.
Yeah.
And yet children have a lot of thoughts. So
Mm,
I shared a series of pictures. The first two pictures I shared were just these beautiful pictures from 3 or 4 year old children who are growing up in a Christian home, but have these mental pictures of what God is like. And yeah, I love Kai's picture.
yeah.
He had Jesus and Nicodemus, they're both smiling, and there's all these little circles. And when his mum asked him, "So what's with the circles?" He's like, "They're grenades, of course." Because it was nighttime. Like Jesus needed to protect Nicodemus. And we laugh because, of course, we know Jesus didn't have grenades. But at the same time, it's this beautiful picture of Kai understanding that when you're with Jesus, you're safe. Jesus has this, nobody's going to mess with you.
Yeah.
Um, so we also went on, we asked the question, well, what about children from hard places?
Yeah.
Bouncing off what Cheryl had done on Tuesday night, that we realized that children growing up in many cases have experienced hell on earth. And is God calling those children too? And I actually did my doctoral research
Mm,
with children who'd experienced trauma.
yeah.
And the first question I asked them was, draw a picture of God.
Yeah.
And I shared some of the amazing, beautiful pictures of God
Yeah.
that those children drew.
Yeah.
I love them all, but one of my favorite ones was Jesus in a big dump truck full of dirt
Yes. Yeah.
with a siren on top. And yeah, just Jesus is big, he's powerful, he's dealing with the mess of our world,
Yeah.
and everybody can see him.
Yeah. I think that it's those drawings are beautiful.
Mhm.
They point to the character of God that those kids are observing,
Mm,
and sometimes it's just such a unique perspective that they have that no one else has. And
yeah,
um, I just think it's so wonderful that we got to hear some of these stories
mm,
because you're realizing, wow, these kids they do have big
we
ideas.
do.
Thinking about our own childhood, we had all sorts of big ideas as kids,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And to assume that's not the same, I think, is a mistake. And
Mm,
it was really encouraging to just see how God is calling the children and the miracles that He's performing for them, the ways that He's already speaking to
yeah,
them before somebody comes in, before a Christ follower even shows up. He's
Mhm.
already
Yeah.
speaking to them. Um, Latching on to something you just mentioned about how sometimes we can we find ourselves in the paradigm of thinking that children, I'm not quite sure how you phrase it, but almost that they're inert, that they're not
Yes.
having these big
yeah,
thoughts, right? And that we kind of have to drag them along,
yeah,
or we kind of leave them behind because they're not at the stage yet.
Yeah.
And that leads me to thinking some of the final thoughts that you touched on at the conference is empowering our kids, actually, like actually getting them involved. I'm
Mhm.
curious if you could touch on a couple of the ways that we can see that playing out.
Yeah.
mm,
Well, I think first of all, the challenge is with the churches.
Yes.
Many
Okay.
times we don't see children as being old enough or mature enough
mm,
Hmm.
to make a difference because they lack the language or they lack the experience.
Yeah.
But our children are sitting there. There's in our child's mind, they're like, there's no reason why I shouldn't be serving God. Like
Mm.
God told us to serve others. Us includes children. Like
Yeah.
mm,
it's just very matter of fact for children. And so they want to do things. I mean, you know what it's like. Kids come to you, can I help?
Yeah.
Can I help? And we do that in our homes, but what about in the church? Can they help?
Mm.
And so it was really fun. Esther did her doctoral
Yeah.
research with that. I actually did my research with a group of 9 to 13-year-olds and
Okay.
seeing how we could empower them to serve.
Hmm.
And so they actually looked at the community. They designed a project. We let them choose what they wanted to solve
Yep.
or to
Yep.
address. They designed the project and then they implemented it with the support of the adult leaders. And then the kids came back and told us what it did for them. One little girl, 11 years old, she said, I used to watch things like this on TV, and I dreamed that maybe one day I'll get to do something.
Huh.
And today my dream came true. And
Wow.
so they're just hungry to make a difference in the world around them.
Mm.
And so when I talk about people coming alongside, when children are empowered for ministry, God is working. We know that God is speaking to them. We know that they're listening. And what we need to do as adults or as shepherds,
Yeah.
we want to be feeding them what they need to go. So again, it's that respect where we listen to their opinions, where we give them fairness to be involved. We think about the opportunities. Sometimes we can design an opportunity, but do we have the courage to let the kids actually think this might be an opportunity that we could do and do the plan? It means that, well, it might not look the way we would do it, but God doesn't have to live in the boxes we put him in
Yeah.
sometimes. Then we talked about giving them responsibilities. When we give kids responsibility, that means we as adults have to pry our fingers open
Yes.
and let go of some of that responsibility ourselves. But then they need support.
Yeah.
We need to walk alongside them. And that support might be training them how to do, like how to share their testimony, or giving them a skill on how to be a good listener to other people. It might be, the support might be in practical ways, like kids, if they try something and they fail, they want to give up.
Yeah.
And so we can come alongside as their shepherd and say, come on, you can do this. Don't give up. Don't stop. So it's giving them the praise, the encouragement to keep going, because they will grow in confidence and they will grow in skills. We all did.
Yeah.
We had to get to that point. We never we wouldn't be here if we didn't have people alongside of us along the way saying, you can do this.
Yeah, and as you talk about that, it reminds me of something that you guys brought up throughout the sessions, is that, the kids, they have the ideas, they have an understanding, they have the desire, but oftentimes they just don't know what to do with it,
Yeah.
or how to compile it, or how to make use of it, and that's where we can step in as the shepherds, and that's what a shepherd does, to guide, right? To lead, to care for, to nurture and build up those skills, to nurture and
Exactly.
build up those ideas and the heart and the character. I just think that's beautiful, and I just really appreciate the ways you guys have encouraged us to actually take actionable steps in this, right? Starting with that question that we all have to ask ourselves: do we love God? Do we love Jesus? Right? And then everything flows out from there. That if we do, okay, then how are we going to be shepherds? How are we going to care for these little lambs, those that are at risk, those that are hurting? Can we come in there and give them the respect, the information, and actually care for them, right? But then going another step further and actually being there to build them up, right? And I think that challenge that we can be the one person, I can be that one person to make a difference in one person's life. I think that's a challenge we can take with us, and I do hope that everything we've talked about here doesn't just fade away. One of my frustrations or concerns is that we oftentimes over philosophize things. I don't know if that's a word, but that's how I put it. That we like to think about stuff and we like to talk about it and we give the numbers, but then it just stays there. And I really do hope and pray that as a body, or those that are listening, and as we discuss this, that we want to just let it stay in our heads, but we'd actually go out and act in this way. And so I just encourage all of you guys to consider, what's the one kid, what's the one youth in your family, in your community, that you see walking down the street, going to the dollar store, the gas station for a Slurpee. Stop and say hi. I don't know. But I think it's a good consideration for us. What's the one person, and we can be that one person to make a difference. So thank you, Esther, Sheryl, so much for coming to share with us at GCC. And thank you for just taking the time to be a part of our community and to encourage all of us. We are so grateful to each of you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
If you guys are interested in learning more about what these ladies do, of course, I guess they can check out Lancaster Bible College. You can actually go study under Esther. That's wonderful. I'm assuming they can just go to the website and...
Yep, you can find out about LBC at the website there, but also Global Children's Forum if you're interested. Childreneverywhere.com will tell you a little bit about the larger children's ministry project Sheryl and I are involved in.
Okay, wonderful. And of course, they can find your information on Action, but I'm assuming it's the same stuff that you guys are working on together.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So I encourage you guys, check it out. Learn some more about what's happening with children in the world.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody else.
Thank you all.
Thank you.